Welcome to a Wiser Retirement podcast. Before we get started with the episode, I want to tell you about a new ebook available on our website called Buyer Beware. Why do they keep trying to sell you that annuity? This ebook covers the various types of annuities, negatives to owning annuities, and better investment alternatives to annuities. To download this ebook, you can click the link in the episode notes or go to wiserinvestor.com and you'll find it at the bottom of the page. Now on to today's episode.
Welcome to a Wiser Retirement Podcast. We believe the best financial advice should always be conflict-free. I'm your host, Casey Smith, guiding you to financial freedom. Today is my co-host, Missie Beach. Hey, Missie.
Hey, Casey. How are you?
Doing good. Today, we're going to talk about taking control of finances for your aging parents. This topic actually really needs some attention. There's just, we've seen it in my 23 years of doing this, and your time as well. We've seen some crazy things happen, and I remember one story. Unfortunately, this is all publicly documented, so we can talk about it. But a Morgan Stanley broker weaseled his way into the will of his clients, which you're not supposed to do that.
No, you're not.
And we became aware of it because one of the workers, one of the nurses, she had round-the-clock care at her home. One of the nurses reached out to us and said, hey, something doesn't seem right here. He comes by every day. He gets the mail. He goes through the mail and gives her some, and sometimes he takes some with him. And could you guys come and talk with her? And come to find out, she was like really scared of him, what he might do. And she was a widow. She was in her 90s. All her friends predeceased her. Her husband predeceased her, and they didn't have any children.
Ooh, last one standing.
Yeah, and so she had left all the money. She wanted to leave all her money to Emory, I guess is where her husband worked, possibly. This is several years ago, so the details are a little fuzzy. But in the end, we went there. We went to transfer her money to Wiser, and we took an attorney with us who rewrote everything, like on the spot with witnesses and everything.
Oh, because she was still sound mind.
Oh, yes, very much so. And as soon as the money transferred, he showed up at the house, irate, made her transfer it back. So the money went back to Morgan Stanley. And he attempted to he also had her change the will back to him as 100% beneficiary.
Oh my gosh, what nerve.
Yeah, and his house was on West Basis Ferry down there in Atlanta. And I wondered how many other people he had
strong-armed
to get that multi-million-dollar home. But she passed away maybe 6-7 months later, and he had the nerve to challenge the will in court.
Of course he did.
And in the end, the estate was split between him and Emory.
He got half?
He got half.
Wow.
And partially was Emory was like, look, we know this is wrong. We know what he did was wrong. But in the end, her intention was to leave money to this foundation. And if we spend all of our time fighting him, there's really not going to be a whole lot left. I think they each got maybe roughly $500,000 or so.
Yeah. Better to just take it and run.
Better take it and run. And so we reported him to Morgan Stanley and the CFP board. The CFP board did nothing. They could care less. And then the Morgan Stanley, I believe, terminated him, but they did it in a very quiet fashion.
Of course.
And he, from what we can tell, got paid a huge bonus to move his business to a different independent company.
Of course he did. Doing the same thing under a different name.
Exactly. And so it was just the whole process was so frustrating for us as we watched, and it just gave me. I tell people all the time is that the barrier to entry to be a financial advisor is so low.
I know.
And stuff like this will happen. We have we talked about another podcast, that Morgan Stanley guy up in Wilmington, right? He actually was running a Ponzi scheme. This guy was just shady. There was no Ponzi scheme, but and of course, when you looked at her portfolio, she had all the mutual funds that have the highest trailing fees. I'm sure all of it was suitable. I'm sure what she was invested in was perfectly suitable for her. She didn't have any annuities, which was amazing. But I'm sure it was all perfectly suitable for her, but not the best.
Exactly.
So I say all this to say that maybe, the problem here is seniors can get taken advantage of, right? And
they do.
And this is why you need to talk about control of finances as parents and relatives age. I did a little research on top scams. Believe it or not, it wasn't Morgan Stanley advisors. it was between the ages of like 60 and 70. It actually ended up being the study goes from like 60 to through 80 years old.
Okay.
So romance scams. So this is where loved ones are lonely and they start meeting people online now, and they make friends and end up sending them money, and the whole thing's a scam. It's an imposter on the other side. People acting like they're the government. $61 million in fraud lost for people pretending to be the government. Saying you owe money.
Yeah. You didn't pay your taxes, or you missed jury duty, or you didn't pay this ticket.
Yeah. We have a lady who got a phone call one time who actually owed money to the IRS. And it said, hey, you owe $5,000 to the IRS. She actually owed much greater than that.
Oh, so she thought it was a deal?
Well, he said he had to show up at this bank, and you need to give me $5,000. I'm calling the sheriff, and they're going to arrest you. And so she got in the car, and she drove here.
Oh, good.
And so she was on the phone with the criminal as what she was walking in the front door of the office, going, I don't know what to do, but I knew you guys take care of things, so I just came here. Prizes, sweepstakes, and lotteries. Oh. I guess they're getting more creative than that Saudi prince who's won millions of dollars, but you have to send him $1 million first so he can get it.
Yeah, unlock your money.
Investments, so that's a pretty big one. $25 million. This is in 2019. $25 million in investment fraud. Tech support scams, I could totally see that.
Yeah.
Timeshare sales is another one. $17 million in 2019 just in timeshare sales fraud. And these are all just reported. What's very interesting is if seniors get taken advantage of financially, they tend not to tell anybody because they're embarrassed because they feel stupid.
Yeah, these are way underreported.
Exactly. Timeshare resales. So timeshare is really on there twice. The sales and the resale of them really totals 20 million. So that's like
30 million.
Or 30, yeah. So that would be number 4 on the list, actually, if you combine those two together.
I'm surprised timeshares are still so far up there.
You think people get smarter?
We have clients still buying them.
Yeah. And now you don't even buy a deed. Now you get like points.
Yeah.
You're buying points, basically. But I don't know. Sometimes I think, I really love going to Park City to ski. And it costs so much for lodging. You have to really get ahead of that, book early so you're not paying an exorbitant amount of money. And you see the timeshare, and the timeshare is $10,000, and it's $1,800 to stay there for the week each year. That looks pretty good.
Are you talking yourself into a timeshare?
No,
Casey?
I'm not. I'm not talking myself into a timeshare.
The allure.
But I would want a deeded one. I would know that that's my unit right there, and I stay in that unit, or at least in that property. I don't know about the point system. So, if you look at losses, 20 to 30-year-olds maybe lose $300 to $400 in monetary loss. This was a 2019 study. But if you get into between 60 and 70, it jumps to $600. 70 to 80, it's $800. Over 80, $1,600 is the median loss by age. And they're saying that like 82% of the people over the age of 80 don't even report the fraud because they're too embarrassed to do it.
Or maybe they don't know it happened.
No, I think they know that happened, but so yeah, that's the problem. The problem is if you aren't talking to your parents about money, and as their mind starts to slip, for your, it could be aunts or uncles, whoever, but as their minds start to slip, you have the potential of bad things happening.
Yeah. And mentioning all these scams because they're getting so intricate now that, the one with the phone call, where it's their grandson on the phone with their voice saying, hey, I'm crying. I need help.
Right.
Send $1,000 right away.
That's that'll probably be what will hit us when we're their age.
Yeah.
But I think we've talked about that before, but basically with AI right now, it can replicate voices. So you could have a scammer calling as a grandson's voice saying, I'm in so-and-so and I need $1,000. You need to send it to this address.
It's happening now. So, what's a grandparent supposed to do? They freak out. But if you can educate them, say, hey, you might get this, what would you do? You need to call me. You need to call your grandson. You need to do all these steps. Just hang up, because it's not going to be your grandchild calling.
So anyway, let's, obviously that's preventative, but I think that the generation that didn't talk about money is probably starting to disappear now. Because the next generation, baby boomers tend to be a little more open to talking about money with their children, or lack of. In some cases.
Well, I think about my own parents who are in their early 80s. Like, they never talked about money. I've only made them talk about money because this is my profession. But growing up, we never talked about money. So now they're very open because, I forced it. But I think there's a lot of people in my shoes where their parents are still holding their cards close to the vest. And I keep just banging my fist on the table. Like, you've got to go talk to them, figure out where their estate documents are, find out their passwords, figure out where, their life insurance policies are. What would you do if something happened? If the day comes, what's your first step? Because I know with my own parents, like, holy cow, there's still a lot of things I need to ask, even though I know their financial picture. Logistically, there's a lot to know.
Yeah, and you also have to make sure you have the right sibling do that. You probably don't want a sibling that's in a tough spot financially to be working with your parents in money, because that money is going to disappear. So you definitely want the person doing it who is coming from a position of strength.
And that's a good conversation to have with your parents, because who they named maybe 20, 30 years ago likely is not the right person to serve in that capacity today. Because a lot of times, it's just the oldest child because it was the oldest child, but they didn't know how that person was going to be with money. Yeah. And so I tell a lot of clients, when you relook at these estate documents, is this the person who's going to get things done? Or is this the person who's going to just let it languish out there for, a year or two, and your estate's never going to get settled? Right. And it's the person who's going to allow these family, headbutts to go on and just, tarnish your reputation.
And sometimes you pick third parties. Typically with net worth above $2 million, you can find companies like Cumberland Trust that will just step in and settle estates, and then you remove the kids from that whole process.
Absolutely. And then the other big thing is, don't name co-executors.
Oh no.
Don't
do that.
I've seen that go south way more than I care to admit. But yeah, do your family a favor and only name one person to serve at a time.
So we put together a list, Missy. Once you kind of start walking us through these 5 things that we should know about taking control of parents' finances, and I think we've already kind of started on number 1 here, which is start the conversation early.
Yeah, don't wait until the parents are, at death's door. Don't. It's a hard conversation, so don't wait until you're in crisis mode. But then the next step is just to take inventory of your parents' finances, figure out where everything is. They might not have engaged with a financial advisor like Wiser, and so they might be scattered all over the place. So get your arms around everything. be proactive and try to consolidate things as much as you can for them. See if you can combine all these disparate accounts and get it nice and tidy before the time comes. And then the next step is really just to simplify all their bill paying and financial tasks. Hopefully they're still not writing checks and sending them in the mail. And hopefully they've evolved to online bill pay, but really make sure you know their password and how to get onto their online bill pay and understand what occurs monthly. And so you would know how to continue their life if needed and make that household run. If they had to go into the hospital for a few weeks or a month, would you be able to log in and pay all the bills and keep everything going? So that's huge.
You can also set up direct bill pay. So I do this with my mom.
Oh,
Hi, Mom.
smart.
She listens to the podcast. But I set her up where it's auto pay. So all the utilities
That's smart.
and insurance, all that automatically comes out of the account every month. And then I just kind of log in once a month and see that everything got paid and there's no $5,000 water bill, right?
Yeah,
so you just
audit
make sure
it.
you just make sure that you have enough liquid assets in there to cover maybe 3 or 4 months worth of bills.
Yeah.
And then the cash inflow is enough to maintain what's going out, and there's no surprises in that account. And then there's a separate account for spending and eating out and all that stuff. So between the two accounts, I know that all the basics are taken care of. And then this account, she could take the zero based on her spending habits for that month.
And if you have something more complicated, a household that might have household cleaning help or yard help or things like that, or more complicated bill pay situations, you can hire a third-party bill pay situation. That comes with added expense and management, but
it's pretty expensive, right?
Yeah.
I've never gotten quotes for that. Because typically when I see that happening, it's at a trust department at a bank.
Yeah.
And you're losing probably 2-3% a year of the assets to all that. So it's very, very expensive.
Yeah. So you could go down that route if you're out of state and you just want it off your plate entirely.
True.
So next thing is to consider a power of attorney in terms of financial power of attorney. So you could actually go to that bank and say, here, I'm authorized to sign on my mother's account. Here's the financial power of attorney. I need to do X, Y, Z. And that's not always cut and dried. You're going to get the runaround. You're going to have to prove it. You might have to have an original sometimes. It seems like it's never the same rules from financial institution to financial institution, but you need that document.
Right.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. I've found that power of attorneys at banks are never straightforward. No. They really don't want to do it, but in the end,
they have to.
Yeah.
Because it's a legal document. Some will try to push back and they'll say, oh, but we need it on our form. And you'll say, that ship has sailed. Here's my legal document.
Yeah.
I'm presenting it to you because the person's incapacitated. You must take it. So stand your ground.
Exactly.
And then the last thing is just communicate regularly because, if things change, they're still your parents' money. Right. And although you're there as a guide and trying to help them, remember, it's still their show. And so you have to honor their wishes and you can advise them, but it's still their money that they've earned over the years, and they still want to keep their dignity about it. And you just always have to tiptoe a fine line, I feel like.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into a couple additional tips we've added. Just be respectful and patient.
Yeah, that's really good. Mm-hmm.
So you have to understand that some people don't want help, but they know they need help. And those can be difficult conversations, right? So this is what's got to change here. And I think that, quite honestly, maybe you're just there to listen and understand what's happening, but we have a lot of sons and daughters that come with mom and dad to our meetings.
Oh, absolutely.
And we certainly encourage that. We don't have anything to hide. We're not a firm trying to sell anything. And quite honestly, a lot of times they come in very, very defensive, I guess. It's like, well, you're trying to sell my mom and dad, you know?
Yes,
and
exactly.
a lot of times they become clients too.
That's how it happens.
So they'd make the transition to Wiser after they realize that the person that they're using actually is not working in their best interest.
True.
So,
and as children of aging parents, I think you can sometimes be lulled into this false sense of security where you think your parents have it all together. You know, stereotypically, maybe the dad was a very successful corporate businessman, and maybe you had, you know, a really nice house growing up and had the beach house, and everything just kind of flowed throughout life. So you expect everything to be all buttoned up and prepared. But hey, maybe your dad was great at running a business, but the financials on the personal side might just be like blah, all over the place.
right.
And so that's great that, you know, he earned a great living for the family and provided, but that doesn't mean that everything's where it's neatly supposed to be. So don't be shocked. It's not like a failure. It just needs tidying up.
Right. Like you said in the other point earlier, just simplifying. You need to get down to one checking account, one bank account.
Yeah.
You don't need to have 20 accounts everywhere.
No.
But yeah, and obviously being honest and transparent. So we have a family member that was always very conservative. She invested in an annuity one time through a banker and just absolutely regretted it. But she was a CD investor, and for a good portion of her life, she's probably picking up 10% CDs. But then it came to 5, and she was happy with that. And then for the last decade, they were almost 0. And so we still we're managing her assets. We still had to stick to pretty much buying CDs. They put $10,000 in. They wanted to support me when I was a new advisor. Aww. And so they came in with $10,000. And so that was allowed to stay in stocks, but everything else had to be in CDs.
CDs.
And so it drove her only daughter crazy, but in the end you have to respect what their wishes were.
Yeah.
And we've had to get, as interest rates have risen, we can now go back to more CD-like things for her. But we did have to get permission to go a little further into like 3-month treasuries or 2-month treasuries so that she get some type of a yield.
Yeah.
Because for a while there, it was like a negative number.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just need to be transparent and telling them, you know, this is what the situation is. Now, there is a point at which mentally dementia or Alzheimer's kick in, and then, you know, you have to do what you have to do to take care of that person.
Right. That's the most
important thing.
That's
the most important part. And they don't know what's happening anyway, a lot of times, very sadly. Seeking professional help. So a lot of times coming for, you know, I feel like parents look at their kids as if they were still 15.
Yeah.
And all the stupid
changes.
stuff we did, right? It never changes. So sometimes you have to bring in a professional to be a mediator and say, this is what I think should be happening here. And you might agree with the child, but coming from a third party, a lot of times they hear it differently. So
it's just like your own kids don't listen to you, but if someone else tells
right.
them, they'll listen.
Yeah. I'm very familiar with that. Pay hundreds of dollars for coaching, and then they're literally telling the same stuff that you already know.
Said. But okay.
Yeah, that's the way it is. Elder care attorneys. So just going to go see a regular attorney, so that your loved one's headed to a nursing home, and you need to do some estate planning around those expenses and protecting the assets. You just don't go see a run-of-the-mill attorney. You need one that specializes in elder care law. And that's very important, because there's a lot of things that you can do as husband and wife. So if mom and dad are still alive, let's say dad needs care, there are a lot of things you can do to separate assets out from him on to your mom, and that's perfectly legal. You can move assets out of his name all into her name, where probably up to this point everything's in a revocable trust or everything's held jointly. So there's techniques to doing this to preserve assets for mom.
Exactly.
Now when mom's the last one living, it gets a lot harder. You can't do that anymore. You can't move it to the next generation without a 5-year look back. So things get a little more complicated. But don't be spending all your money on the first one to go to the nursing home.
No, exactly. So protect those assets and be careful with joint accounts and. If you're on the joint checking with mom and the way that gets counted. So there's all kinds of pitfalls. And you're right, an elder care attorney all day long will help you. And it's not just, at the point where mom needs to go into the home now. Like you said, that 5-year look back is key, where mom needs to start spending her assets or gifting it out or whatever the plan might be.
Yeah, there definitely has to be a game plan. It's a little different for each family depending on the asset level as well. So that's something to pay attention to. Okay, I think we got that covered well, Missy. Thanks for doing this. And I do have to say one more thing.
What's that?
Today is your 1-year anniversary at Wiser Wealth Management.
Yes, it is.
And we are so happy.
Year.
We are so happy that you're here. Now, this is not 1 year of experience in the business.
No.
You've got more than me. We won't talk about how much that is exactly, but you came in here a year ago and just really took control of planning, and I'm forever grateful. I tell people all the time is that you can work with me or you can work with Missy. Missy's the better person. I'm now the second-tier advisor of my own firm.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
But yes, we're very happy that you're here. You and Michaela are doing great things in planning, and we look forward to seeing her progression under you as well.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're interested in learning more about Wiser Wealth Management and want to schedule a consultation to meet with one of our fiduciary financial advisors like Missy, you can do so by going to wiserinvestor.com, or you can click on the link in the episode notes. We do have a YouTube channel called A Wiser Retirement, same name as our podcast. And you can look at episode 145. Prevent Family Conflict and with Legacy Planning. That's a great video that'll be linked on our YouTube channel. You can also look at episode 145 in the podcast, Dying Without Estate Planning. Do you hate your family? ? That was a fun episode we did a long time ago. So that might be good if you have a situation where no one's done any financial planning or retirement estate planning. That's really bad. In fact, I just did estate planning last night for my son, who's 18.
Oh, great! Yeah, I'm about to do mine for my 18-year-old too.
Yes,
he just turned. Mm-hmm.
I emailed Sean and I was like, Sean, Ethan's 18. Please prepare all the documents that we need. So if he goes to when he goes to college, that we have the ability to do things. Hopefully, you never have to use a medical directive, but if we did, that's one less pain point, right?
Exactly. Get it on file.
Oh, we also linked the Consumer Affairs study on fraud. So yeah, just communicate with your loved ones. Make sure that everyone is doing the right thing financially. Help protect your family's legacy.
You got it. Communicate.
Thanks, Missy. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to a Wiser Retirement podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening. That way you don't miss any new episodes. We'd also appreciate if you could leave a rating and review. If you have any questions about anything that was discussed today, head to wiserinvestor.com and reach out. This episode was produced and edited by Ken Hoadley. This podcast is strictly for informational purposes only and is not to be considered as investment advice or a solicitation to buy or sell any financial products, securities, digital assets, or any other investment vehicles, or a basis to make any financial decisions. Wiser Wealth Management Incorporated is a registered investment advisor with the SEC. The host and or guest may personally own securities, digital assets, or other investment vehicles mentioned on this podcast. Neither the host nor guest of the show are compensated for their participation, and no referral fees are paid to or received by any host or guest for clients, listeners, or similar interests. Investments involve risk, and unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Be sure to first consult with a qualified financial advisor, tax professional, insurance professional, and or legal professional before implementing any strategy discussed herein. Past performance is not indicative of future performance.